Now that we've allowed this material to cool down after we've taken it out of the ignition furnace, we now have to empty this basket into a pan and weigh the material that's in here. You need to get the tare weight of this pan that we're going to put the material in. So place that on your scale and record that weight on your paperwork. At this point you can re-zero that so your pan weight is in the scale itself. Now we can empty our material into this pan and weigh just the sample itself. Some of the tools I'm going to be using is a stiff wire brush to clean the basket, and also a paintbrush to sweep out any of the fines that we need to get into our pan. Another thing you might notice is that we're using a piece of construction paper in case any of the fines fall out of the basket, and this will allow us to collect them and put them back into our sample pan. And we can now clean our baskets and the material in it into these pans. By using your wire brush, scrape the material to one side of your pan. And make sure you don't have any particles stuck in your brush. And carefully pour the material into your pan. Scrape the bottom and dislodge any particles that are stuck in these holes. And do the same thing to this side of the pan. Do the same thing with the bottom. Again, making sure you don't have particles stuck in your wire brush. At this point in time, I use the paintbrush to empty out the bottom pan. Now, any material that has fallen onto this construction paper, I will now empty into this pan. Now we're ready to weigh and record this sample weight. And this sample weight on your worksheet will go under the mass of residual aggregate. Now that we've weighed and recorded this material, we're now going to wash it. What we want to do is eliminate as much as possible all the 200 minus that's in this sample. We're going to wash it with our mechanical washer. You can also use a stainless steel bowl to do the same thing over a nest of sieves. The nest of sieves will be the number 10 and the number 200. We do require an aerosol to be used to put in with the aggregate while it's being washed, whether it's in a mechanical washer or if you're doing it by hand. What this aerosol does is it breaks up the fine particles and cleans them away from the coarser particles. And this will allow good separation. It doesn't take very much. Just a few drops with a syringe will be adequate. Now you can put your aerosol into the material. And again, just a few drops will be adequate. Now we're going to start the water. We have a nest of sieves, a number 10 sieve on top of a number 200. The number 10 sieve is to protect any coarse particles from hitting the 200. So at this point, we are going to consider this reasonably clean. This is what it should look like. This is what your color of your water should look like as it's coming out of any decanter that you're using. Once we get to this point, we will turn everything off and we'll empty the material in the aggregate washer back into our pan and dry to a constant weight. And again, check your aggregate washer to make sure that you've cleaned all the fines out of the aggregate washer into your sample pan. Now what we need to do is take the material that's retained on our number 10 and our number 200 sieve and put that material back into our pan. So to do that, you can invert the number 10 and rest it on top of the 200 and spray any of the material retained on it back onto the 200 sieve. And again, check your sieve to make sure that you've got everything cleaned off. And what we'll do with the 200 sieve is move this material down to one corner of the sieve before we try to clean it out into our pan. And again, make sure that you check your 200 sieve to make sure that you've cleaned it off completely. Now with the excess water left in this pan, you can slightly tilt your sample pan, and using a squeeze bulb, you can remove the excess water prior to drying. And at this point, water does not have to be decanted back into a nest of sieves. It can go down the drain. And care must be taken that you don't suck up any of the finer particles while doing this, until your sample looks like this. By removing the excess water, this will allow your sample to dry back much quicker. Now that we've got the excess water out of this sample, we're now ready to dry it to a constant weight. I'm going to be using hot plates and heat lamps to do this, to dry it back in a fast manner. If you're drying using this method of hot plate or propane stove, you want to stir this material as it heats to regulate the heat. You don't want to leave this stand alone and walk away from it, because as the water heats up, it'll begin to boil and some of your fines will start to pop out and be lost onto the ground. So regulate the heat by stirring. Now that we've dried our sample back to a constant weight, we're going to weigh it and then we're going to subtract the tare weight. So make sure your scale is zeroed out. Weigh it and then subtract the tare weight from it that we have recorded on our worksheet. And this weight is the sample weight that you're going to record under dry aggregate after wash. Now, once you've done that, we are going to sieve it through a stack of sieves, the appropriate stacks of sieves that you're going to find in your spec book. And this is going to be for a 1/2 inch HMA, and you will find that in chapter 903. So we're going to put the sample in our stack of sieves, and we're going to stick it in a sieve shaker and shake it for 10 minutes. Another thing you want to check is to make sure that you have the most current verification stickers on your sieves prior to use. Now that we've ran this material through our stack of sieves and our sieve shaker for a minimum of 10 minutes, we're going to proceed with running a gradation on this material. We also are going to run cumulative weights, which means we're going to weigh each individual sieve on top of each other to come up with a total weight at the end of this gradation. Again, place this in with the rest of the material and record the weight. This is on the number 8 sieve. Put that under weight retained. At this point, you can use a wire brush to clean the sieves. With these wire brushes, you can just make a clean sweep over the surface of the sieve. If you have any particles left in the openings of this sieve, don't be concerned with it. This is the number 30 sieve. You can continue to use a wire brush to clean the surface. Once you get past the 40 sieve, you can no longer use a wire brush. You can use a soft bristle brush. This is our number 50 sieve. That's why we'll use our soft bristle brush for the remainder of the sieves. So keep continuing the same process, including the pan, writing each weight down accordingly on the specified sieve, and that will complete the gradation. Now that I've completed the gradation, one important thing there is to check to validate your test. The weight of this material on your scale has to be within 0.2% of the original weight of the mass before you shook it. In this case, our weight difference is 1 gram. We had a 1,300 gram sample, which allows us a 2.6 gram difference. We're well within that, so our test is now validated by that.